Good afternoon, everyone. It is Friday, August 25th, time for the PM edition of C2-A-Days from Campus to Canton, the final C2-A-Days of the 2023 season. When we originally thought of this idea, it just sort of happened very quickly and threw it out in the Campus to Canton Slack. My original thought was we'd do it maybe the first week of fall camp when news is at its highest around that time. A lot of injuries pop up. A lot of players may have fallen off the roster unexpectedly, and thought that sort of in the spirit of two-a-days, sort of as the old school first week of fall camp, but it became something that obviously we've done for 4 full weeks now, and for me personally, it's been very beneficial. I do tend to read through a lot of news and notes on Twitter all the time, following an army of beat reporters and team sites, and just trying to get as much information as possible to put in our CFB Winning Edge team profiles, which of course are available at campustocanton.com and the C2C Winning Edge tier. This is probably the most certainly the most structured, and just had a daily routine of going through and trying to put down as much as possible each day, as far as news, injury reports, just a large number of outlets have contributed to this. Very, very much appreciate it. So thank you for your support, for coming and watching, and it's been enjoyable. So this will be the final edition, but there is still a ton of content coming your way via Campus to Canton and the Campus to Canton YouTube page. So please do like this video and follow that Campus to Canton YouTube page. And I'll be back tomorrow morning for the tailgate. That will be our weekly preview show that will air at 10 a.m. Each week, each Saturday. And then, of course, the team will be available for fantasy news tonight, each Saturday night as the games are winding down. Plus, we've just got a ton of stuff every week, as always. So do please like this video and subscribe to the Campus to Canton YouTube page. So our final few notes for C2-A-Days. We've got 3 depth charts to talk about. NC State is first up, and unfortunately, before we get to sort of the good stuff, who's starting, who's not, who's got an or by their name, the Wolfpack are dealing with a couple of offensive line injuries that are potentially going to impact this team. Jaden Adams of the News and Observer tweeted out from the media appearance with head coach Dave Doran earlier today that offensive lineman Landon Cooper is going to be out for the week 1 game against UConn. They do hope, according to Doran and Adams, to get Cooper back for the second game of the season. But unfortunately, Dawson Jaramillo is going to miss the entirety of the 2023 season, according to Adams, and from that media availability. Jaramillo, my apologies for any mispronunciation, is a transfer coming in. Originally had him projected as a starter at right tackle, pretty highly rated player in our individual player ratings, our video game ratings, the team profiles at CFB Winning Edge. And it's going to certainly be a hit to the depth for NC State, but with 2 contributors, at least 1 potential starter, at least expected to compete for a starting spot on that offensive line for NC State. Just little something to keep in mind as we get ready for week 1, that game against UConn, and then of course, depth becomes an issue the farther we go into the season, especially on the offensive line. So those players will not be able to protect Brennan Armstrong, the number one quarterback on the depth chart, to no one's surprise in this unofficial depth chart released by NC State today. MJ Morris, the sophomore who got himself some playing time last year, including 2 starts, is the number 2 quarterback and likely quarterback of the future. At running back, Jordan Houston is number 1, followed by Michael Allen, or Delbert Mims, or DeMarcus Jones, or Kendrick Raphael. So definitely some competition still ongoing for the Wolfpack at the running back position, behind Houston, who is the returning starter. Speaking of returning starters, there's just one in the receiving corps for NC State. That's Keon Lesane. He is penciled in as the starter at the Z position, just ahead of Bradley Rosner, the transfer from Rice. A lot of folks expected when Rosner showed up on the NC State roster not long ago that he was probably the player to beat to be wide receiver 1 for the Wolfpack this year. Of course, there's plenty of time for him to not only climb to the top of the depth chart, but become the most productive receiver. But it's difficult to win a job outright in just a few weeks. So Rosner is currently the number 2 Z on the depth chart behind Lesane. Dakari Collins and Jacoby Baldwin are also behind Rosner at that position. There are 2 potential starters at the X position, X wide receiver. Julian Gray has an or by his name with Terrell Timmons Jr., another of the NC State receivers who were expected to potentially be among that group who could be the number 1 wide receiver, probably the favorite to be the number 1 receiver before Rosner transferred over to NC State. But at least as of right now, Timmons is not a clear-cut starter yet. So he and Julian Gray are listed atop the depth chart at the X position, followed by Anthony Smith. And then the inside receiver position, Casey Concepcion. We've mentioned him in C2-A-Days before. Just had a pretty incredible fall camp, it sounded like. We talked about he might have an opportunity to emerge and become a factor in this offense. Well, it sounds like he is going to start at that inside receiver position ahead of Jalen Coit, the sophomore. At the flex Y, so they do list 4 receiver positions in the starting lineup in the depth chart, as well as a tight end. So, who knows if Concepcion is going to be on the field first. Maybe Porter Rooks at the flex Y might be a starter, or he is sharing that position, Rooks, with another true freshman, Juice Vereen, who is listed from a college fantasy football perspective, in most leagues has tight end eligibility, though at 6'4", 214, is built more like a big wide receiver. So he is expected to play that flex Y position, currently a co-starter there with Porter Rooks. And speaking of tight end, Trent Penix is not the clear-cut starter as most expected. He and Chris Towdle are sharing that spot with an or between their names. Towdle actually listed first. Sed Sebro is more the blocker tight end. He is 3rd on this list, but had quite a lot of playing time last year as well. So NC State expecting to play quite a lot of folks to figure out their roles and the direction of this offense. Of course, with Robert and I coming in as the new offensive play caller, pretty exciting upside. Really, I personally am excited to see how this unit comes together. We have a little bit clearer idea of how the Wolfpack is going to line up, and perhaps most exciting to some. It's always exciting when a true freshman is expected to start week 1, and Casey Concepcion is going to be that player, and Juice Vereen is in the mix as well. So good news there. At Nebraska, a lot of new things to discuss for the Cornhuskers also, who released their official unofficial depth chart today. At quarterback, to no one's surprise, Jeff Sims is going to get that first start. Henrik Harburg and Chubba Purdy are listed with an or between their name at second and third behind Sims on the depth chart. But we've also discussed Sims at length at times in the early days of C2-A-Days, how he apparently, after transferring in from Georgia Tech, just immediately took on a leadership role, established himself as one of the most consistent workers in the offseason program, was listed in their top 10% club. I forget the official name, but just basically every week since he showed up. Another name who was very consistent in being listed among that group was the top running back on the depth chart, Gabe Ervin Jr. Ervin has missed a little time with injury, but is back and has, with the new coaching staff, it seems, put himself in a position to be the starter at running back. He is listed ahead of Ramir Johnson and Anthony Grant, both of whom are experienced players. Grant, actually, the returning starter, played more than 70% of snaps last year. But according to some earlier reports in the spring, Grant had sort of worked himself into the doghouse a little bit. Johnson last year spent some time in the doghouse as well. So Gabe Ervin Jr. is going to start for the Cornhuskers according to the depth chart, followed by Johnson, Grant, and then Emmett Johnson, redshirt freshman, is fourth on the list. At the wide receiver positions, some surprises. I guess maybe if you missed some earlier C2-A-Days, I should say, because we have mentioned the name Alex Bullock a couple of times. A sophomore walk-on is listed as a starter. Omaha, Nebraska native. Is listed ahead of returning starter Marcus Washington at one of the wide receiver positions. Washington, of course, I believe the very first note we might have mentioned in C2-A-Days, it was very early on, was a discussion of his hand injury early in the spring and how he could miss some practice time. It seems, at least, according to what's here on the screen or on paper, that Washington hasn't quite been able to, establish himself as that starter as perhaps was expected. But Alex Bullock getting the nod at one of the spots, and Isaiah Garcia Castaneda, another common top 10% name, former New Mexico State wide receiver, has established himself as a starter, just ahead of Ty Hahn, another walk-on. So we mentioned this not long ago, that there were some quotes from head coach Matt Rule about how these walk-ons perhaps a little more trusted than, for example, true freshmen like Malachi Coleman. A lot of us thought the highly rated 6'4" Coleman would be in line perhaps for early playing time. Rule kind of shot that down just a little bit in some of his recent media appearances. Perhaps it's just, don't want to hype up a true freshman too much, don't want to put too much pressure on him. Maybe we will see Coleman sooner rather than later. I think few could argue that raw talent, he wouldn't be slotted ahead of some of the guys who are listed on the step chart. But at least as of right now, it seems that Alex Bullock, Isaac Garcia Castaneda, most trusted by the coaching staff. The slot position, Billy Kemp IV has been, I think, at least from a CFF perspective, expected to be the most productive wide receiver. Had a long career at Virginia. Joshua Fleeks is going to be his backup in the slot. Former Baylor wide receiver, also played a little running back, recruited by Matt Rule at Baylor. So those two transfers are going to be working in the slot with Kemp listed at number 1. The tight end position is an or situation. Nate Borkircher and Thomas Fidone II are listed as the co-starters at tight end. Fidone, my apologies for mispronunciation, has had a really, really strong fall as well. I know we've mentioned several notes of him and what he has done early in fall camp. So good to see he's back and healthy. Has missed, I believe, most of the last 2 seasons with injuries. So that is good news that he is back on the depth chart. One final team who we were able to get a look at their depth chart put out today by the team is UAB. Evan Dudley of AL.com tweeted it out. Not too many surprises. Any mention that we've done so far this fall of UAB has said that Jacob Zeno is pretty clearly the top quarterback. He is number one, going to be backed up by Landry Liddy, the transfer from Louisiana Tech, and Harrison Baker is third on the list. At running back, Jermaine Brown Jr. is the first running back listed. Isaiah Jacobs, the transfer, most recently junior college, started his career at Maryland. Younger brother, I believe, of Josh Jacobs of the Raiders, has quickly come in and made an impression. Seemed to really separate himself from the long list of newcomers that included guys like Demetrius Battle, who was fourth on this list, or with an or. He Lee Beebe, Lee Witherspoon, and Taven Curry all listed as oars behind Jacobs. But it is pretty clear, it seems, at least according to what is listed in the UABsports.com depth chart, that Jermaine Brown and Isaiah Jacobs, and then the rest of the group at running back. At wide receiver, there's a lot of new names in this group. Tajon Palmer, pretty clearly expected to be the top wideout for the Blazers. He is solidified at one of those wide receiver spots, followed by Malachi Holt-Bennett and Brandon Buckhalter. The other 2 starting wide receiver spots have an or. Fred Ferrier II is slashed with TJ Jones at one of those spots, and then Amari Thomas will be the third on that list. And then at the other spot, Strap Hooks and Samario Rudolph are listed as co-starters. Hooks, a true freshman or redshirt freshman, listed as a freshman. So a new name there. And then Cameron Shanks is third, actually a true freshman, at that third wide receiver spot. At tight end, it looks like Bryce Damus, Terrell McDonald, Dallas Payne, and J.C. Sibley are all in the mix to start. There's an or between each of those names. So pretty light news day, just a little bit of depth chart analysis, but did want to again say thank you for tuning in. This is our 40th, I believe, 4 weeks, 5 days a week, and 2 shows a day. I believe that's 40. And it will be our final C2-A-Days. So thank you for tuning in. I cannot wait for us to start off the 2023 college football season tomorrow, Saturday. Of course, again, if you missed it at the top of the show, I will be with the crew from Campus to Canton for the tailgate, our preview show tomorrow on this channel, Campus to Canton YouTube channel. Do please subscribe. Do give this video a like if you've enjoyed C2-A-Days. Hopefully it's helped you out. Hopefully it has kept you up to date on some of the news going on throughout the country, injury reports, depth chart updates, analysis, and then just every little thing we could find, tried to pass on if it was potentially of any help to you from a college football news standpoint, CFF, DFS, whatever it is that you're looking for. Hopefully we've provided a little bit of value there. So thank you again for tuning in for the final PM edition of C2-A-Days. I'm Nicholas Ian Allen of Campus to Canton.